Millie and Lance Bridges live in a modest but desirable residence on what is considered to be the nicer side of town. Millie arrived home one afternoon to discover that Lance had brought home a surprise present for her. Wearing a red silk ribbon around his neck, in the living room stood a black and white Afghan puppy. Millie clapped her hands in joy as she was delighted with her unexpected gift. Lance declared the puppy's name to be Alf. I'm home. In here, darling, I have a surprise for you. A puppy. This is Alf. Isn't he handsome? He's gorgeous. Alf settled into his new home quickly and easily. It wasn't difficult for him. He was given plenty of exercise, regular tasty food, and a soft, comfortable bed in a warm room. Several months later, Millie, Lance and Alf were taking a Sunday afternoon walk in the park. Millie again tried to bring Lance's attention to the fact that their family addition was imminent. Although Lance was not opposed to being a father, his thoughts, as always, focused on Alf. Millie suspected that her husband's love for the dog was greater than that which he held for her. Alf for her had become an obstacle to her long-term happiness. Isn't this grand? What? Sunday in the park. Just the three of us. There'll very soon be four of us. Is your mother coming to stay? No. I sometimes think she dislikes dogs. Hate to a walking stick. Alf, not there? How embarrassing. Finally, the arrival day came. Soon Lance brought Millie and baby Bridges home from the hospital. Alf heard the family car pull up outside and keys in the lock of the front door. As the door opened, Millie and Lance entered. To Alf's surprise, in Millie's arms was a small creature howling like he had never heard before. In his excitement, Alf tried to jump up so as to investigate what or who was making this bizarre sound. This resulted in Millie screaming, followed by Lance's boot being delivered to Alf's rear end with some force. Alf yelped, Millie shouted, and the baby cried even louder. Alf's fortunes had taken a turn for the worse. The dog! No! Down! Now he's frightened the baby. Get away! What's next? It wasn't very long before Alf was banished from the house. The garden became his only world. To alleviate his boredom, he'd done a lot of digging and rubbish bin exploring. He sometimes ventured into the neighbouring gardens. What Alf thought to be harmless fun, Millie and the neighbours declared to be vandalism and wanton destruction. Millie finally laid down the law. She announced to Lance that for her peace of mind and the well-being of baby Bridges, the dog would have to go. Now, Lance, just for once, listen to me. That dog is more trouble than it's worth. I'm going out of my mind. He has to go. Do you understand? He has to go. Lance's pleading was no match for Millie's determination, and the next day Alf left the home that he loved for the very last time. Lance, with head hung low and tears in his eyes, walked Alf along the empty street. On that grey morning, Alf sensed that it was the day for goodbyes. His long neck drooped until his nose touched the ground. Both Lance's and Alf's hearts were utterly broken. The dog's home sat on a lowly hilltop where the sounds of howling and barking drowned out the birdsong and country sounds of the surrounding woodland and fields. Daunting as the kennel seemed to Alf, his heart lifted when he heard the voices of other dogs. He had been delivered to and left in a solitary pound off the west wing of the kennels, a high fence that offered little chance of escape wired in the yard. As Alf peered through the wire mesh with an ache in his heart, he heard a chorus of dog song coming from the open entrance behind him. Alf gingerly peered through the bars that blocked the window. Inside, he saw a group of dogs that were skipping about, talking, singing, and generally fooling around. His heart lifted a little. He somehow mustered up the courage to half enter the open door. When the inmates noticed Alf, it quickly became apparent that they were only too pleased to welcome a newcomer. They beckoned Alf inside and began to introduce themselves. Ginger, Margot, Cookie, Joker, Hackles and Grubbo. What a lovable but motley bunch these mongrels were. A newcomer. Hi, you got any bones? Where do you come from? Hi there. Oh, what's your name? I'm Alf. Hackles was the first to speak directly to Alf. As usual, he tried to appear a tough guy, but he really wasn't, telling Alf that he was boss of the pound, and that what he said goes without question. And I am Hackles, the toughest dog in the pound. Hackles, chaser, tracker, scrapper. Hackles, prowler, growler, nailer. What I say goes. Cookie, who was by far the biggest dog among the troop, soon stepped in and explained to Alf that Hackles was really a softy, who is scared of spiders and the dark. He put Alf at ease and made him very welcome. Oh yes, goes in one ear and out the other. Take no notice, Alf. Really he's afraid of spiders in the dark. Don't wag your tail, he'll faint. Anyhow, great to have you with us. That night, while all of the other dogs slept, Alf lay on a bed of straw and peered out through the bars of the window at the full moon and the star-filled sky. Within 24 hours his life had changed beyond recognition, but things seemed sort of okay. The days went by. The days became weeks, and the weeks turned into months. Then one morning, the man who brought breakfast to the enclosure forgot to close and lock the gates. The dogs didn't hesitate. In a few short seconds, they were through the gate, across the yard, out through the main entrance, and speeding across open countryside and heading for the safety of the woods. Morning, boys. Rub up. How's the new fella settling in? He's forgot to close the gates. We could. Maybe we. No time to talk about it. Let's go. Accidentally, the jubilant escapees found themselves in the middle of a busy market town. Chaos followed. Traffic came to an abrupt halt, and shoppers started to panic. A chorus of car horns, screams, and barking rose to a feverish pitch. In the midst of this turmoil, one dear old lady came face to face with Alf. Her kind old eyes calmed Alf. He approached her, and she stroked his head. Her smile and soft words made Alf feel good. Moments later, the dogs were on their way, through town and again in the countryside. All day long they stampeded across open country, over moorland and through forests, until finally, at late afternoon, they viewed what to most of the pack was a most unusual sight. It was a farm. There before them were the most unusual animals imaginable. Very different from the inmates back at the dog zone, these creatures were sheep, horses, and a goat. Even more astoundingly, the goat introduced himself as Mr. Goats and inquired if he could help. The dogs explained that they were in need of a safe resting place for the night. Mr. Goats directed our runaway pack down to the farmyard, telling them to find Mrs. Pickles. Look at those guys. What a kennels. Yeah, look at what they're all eating. Grass. Ugh. It's a farm. Come on. Hi, Goat. Mr. Goats, if you please. What do you want? We're on our way to a dog show. Sure, I know. If you go down to the barnyard and ask for Mrs. Pickles, you could maybe hide in the hay barn for the night. Thanks, Goat. I mean, Mr. Goats. In the farmyard, they found an even stranger array of animals: chickens, pigs, cows, and geese. After some discussion, Mrs. Pickles agreed to accommodate their desperate request by hiding them in the barn. The dogs hid up in the hayloft, ready for the night. Their rest was disturbed by the creak of the barn doors opening. The farmer entered, unaware of the watching canine eyes above. He was lighting his pipe when the farmer's wife shouted a beckoning call from the farmhouse. The farmer absent-mindedly attempted to slip his pipe into his jacket pocket. He then left hurriedly, heading towards the farmhouse. Shh! Who's that? Must be the farmer. Husband, are you out there smoking that pipe of yours? No, wife, I'm checking on the animals. Well, dinner's ready now. I'm coming, wife. Oh no, look, he's dropped his pipe. Quick, before too late. Come on, wake those farm animals. Let's get them and us out of here, fast. Our canine heroes had been seen running from the farm, and the news spread fast. This was then connected to the reports of a pack of dogs causing havoc in town. By the time that the media reported the news to the public, sad assumptions had been made. The news announced that a pack of wild and dangerous dogs had escaped and should be captured as soon as possible. We interrupt this program with a news flash. A pack of wild dogs has escaped from the kennels. They have caused traffic chaos and set fire to a barn. The police say that these animals are a dangerous menace to the community and must be caught. The innocent dogs were hunted by dog wardens and the police and were eventually violently apprehended. Their capture was reported in the newspapers. This was noticed by the same old lady who had encountered Alf when she was shopping in town. In her heart, the old lady knew that Alf was certainly not a wild and dangerous dog. Norman, look at this. This isn't a wild and dangerous dog. He's the one I told you about. In town shopping that day. He's lovely. I want you to go down to the police station and sort this out. She heralded the assistance of her husband Norman to do something about this awful situation. Only he and the police know how Norman secured the release of Alf, but get him released Norman did. Norm and his wife adopted Alf, and they loved him. Alf again was safe. How grateful he was as he snuggled up in front of a log fire on his first night under the roof of his wonderful new home. You've brought him home. Wonderful. If he's a mad dog, I'm a movie star. Good boy. Would you like to come and live with us? Of course you would. Who's Mummy's boy? Next morning, Alf was exploring his new garden domain when he heard a familiar bark. When he looked over the fence, to his astonishment, there was his old friend from the dog's home, Grubbo. They greeted each other with excited affection. All of the dogs that had escaped were adopted into good homes. Alf and Grubbo remained close friends and lived next to each other in comfort and happiness for the rest of their long canine days. Hey, is that you, Grubbo? Alf, what are you doing here? I've been adopted. Me too. What's it like for you? Great. The folks here are the finest kind. And if you're next door, that's tops. It couldn't be better. Hey, all the other dogs have homes too. I've seen them out on walks. That's real good news, Grubbo. Got ourselves a couple of good dogs there, Norman.